What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, let's bang out a little mailbag. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs and get your question answered here on the show. We have a lot going on, obviously, with the old Saleh. Have to immediately fire this question after the Saleh news. Should the Niners bring back Saleh as their DC? Look, I get it's not realistic for the Niners to fire their new DC after 5 games. But I'm extremely envious the Chiefs getting to hold on to Spags. Nobody's going to hire Saleh as the new head coach anytime soon, and the Niners are currently in a spot where their DC gets fired or hired away. Thoughts? I would do it in a heartbeat. Listen, what's the statement in business? Like, be quick to fire, be quick to make changes when you know. Obviously, at the highest level, I'm not talking about just like fire the fucking maid because he didn't take out the trash. I'm talking about in a situation where you hope the DC would be good enough, but he might not be. Just hire Saleh. Now, does Saleh still want to do that? He got a lot of money. He hasn't been a defensive coordinator in a while, right? It's a lot more work. Ulbrich has been doing the heavy lifting, but if he'd be down, I'd bring him back tomorrow. I'd fire or demote the guy. Again, this is big business. Guys are making millions. You ain't worried about feelings. It would be a little herky jerky, but a little desperate right now from what I see. I don't expect it to happen, but if it did, like I'd have no problem with it. You know, this isn't like, well, you just gave him an opportunity. Yeah, these opportunities pay $2 to $3 million a year. And our expectations is to compete for Super Bowls. And right now we can't stop Matt Stafford and Kyler Murray. So you get demoted, and we bring back Robert Saleh, which our star players, Nick Bosa, and more importantly, Fred Warner, love. Love the show. Do you think the Steelers' offense would be better or worse if Wilson was under center? Seems like Pitt would be doing, should be doing so much more. I don't think they'd be any better. He's a dink and dunk guy. You know, the one thing Justin Fields gives you is a more explosive player, but he's not as consistent on the dinking and dunking, which Russell Wilson has kind of mastered, I would say, over the last couple of years. But if you're a Steeler fan, do you want to watch Russell Wilson? See the guy the last couple of years? At least with Justin Fields, there is a possibility that at any moment something great could happen. Both guys are really flawed. I would take my chances with Fields over Russell Wilson, would be my take. Is there any hope for the Bengals to make the playoffs? Win the next few and somewhere around 9-7, or is it already over? You have no chance at the playoffs when your defense is that bad. Just none. If you played Deshaun Watson 17 straight games, yeah, you'd be in good shape. But a defense who looks that bad, and now we have some, evidence watching them against Washington, watching them obviously against the Ravens, even a couple weeks ago against Andy Dalton. It's kind of why I like Andy Dalton and the Panthers against the Bears. Well, it turns out the Bears defense is good, and the Bengals is not. So I think you're looking at this thing getting away from them pretty fast. If you can't win a game at home when your quarterback's that good, I can't take you seriously. He was your offense was brilliant. You have to win that game. You have to win that game. Even John Harbaugh was like, I was watching his press conference. He's like, man, we're down about 10 points 3 different times in the fourth quarter, and our guys were just pulling plays out of where. You just can't lose that game. You lose that game, I just can't take you seriously. And to me, the Bengals are not a playoff team. Been listening for a few years now. I'm curious on your thoughts regarding the dominance of the Chiefs' run defense. I watch virtually every NFL game and haven't seen such a dominant defensive unit like this in a very long time. I saw a stat where all the top running backs they faced are averaging about 2.2 yards per carry. Just in their 11-game win streak, they've completely shut down all the premier backs. King Henry, Kamara, Cook, McCaffrey, and Robinson, to name a few. Well, this might be incorrect, and maybe if I was sitting with Spags and I said this, he would push back against this. One thing they have going for them is they have corners who can cover. So when you have corners who can cover, you can cheat, and you can have your safeties cheat closer to the line of scrimmage. They obviously, Nick Bolton is a fly around linebacker, and they have really good defensive linemen. So when you can get penetration and your linebackers and your safeties can cheat in the run game because you feel confident on your outside DBs covering guys in man-to-man situations, it's a huge curveball. Most people cannot do that because they don't trust their DBs. And the other thing he is as a play caller is an incredible blitzer. So when you blitz, and it feels like his blitz calls, like he's the Andy of blitz calls, right? What Andy is to offense of play calling and getting it right. He is that to defensive play calling. You get a lot of guys in the defensive backfield, and you get a lot of guys that I would say just are able to have tackles for losses because you're penetrating the backfield. You're not just relying on your defensive lineman. You've talked about you've talked about who Netflix should hire for the Christmas game. After the Ravens Bengals game, I think they should call Kevin Harlan. He is so electric and deserves to call some primetime games. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah, I mean, he's awesome. I mean, he's obviously great at the NBA. He's great. If you're ever in the car on a Monday night, he usually calls, or I haven't heard it. I'm usually not in the car anymore, but I would say when I lived in the Bay Area, I'd often be in the car doing like local TV stuff, driving home. He would call games for Westwood One. It was a radio, but he was working then with Boomer Esiason or Kurt Warner, but he's excellent. So yeah, I mean, it wouldn't shock me at all if it's going to be difficult because, will these guys that already have a full slate want to do it? Now, money talks, shit walks. So if you're going to pay them, I don't know, whatever these guys make, the equivalent of 50 grand a game, if you're willing to quadruple that for one game, is it worth it to be away from your family? Like I said, I think that's why Tom Brady turned it down. Now, play-by-play guys, they're just they would never give up games. So if they ever get offered them, they usually take them. I would imagine he would take the game if offered. Huge fan of the pod. Been listening for the last 2 years. I feel like after a couple missed deep shots very early in the game, they just completely took the ball out of Fields' hands. There was definitely an effort to get him going by running him, but I feel like the play calls were extremely safe and mostly as the game went on. I know Dallas has a bad run defense, but it became extremely predictable. Do you think this is a sign that they're going to go back to Russell, even though Justin has played pretty well? I think if you go to Russell Wilson, you're insane. You really are. Now, I get Tomlin, older coach in the sense of he's been on the team for a while. Maybe he's inclined to like look at Russell Wilson and hope that he could strike a little bit of that magic where Fields, I mean, the best he's ever played is literally here, and it's not that great. It's not like they're scoring that many points. I don't pretend to believe that 100% Fields is just never going to relinquish that spot because old school coaches get kind of weird sometimes with younger players when they got a veteran player. That what's the worst case scenario? They start Russell a game. You can never go back to. Sure you can, Justin. You're back in the game 2 weeks later. It's the way it works. So I think everything's on the table. I would just keep riding Justin Fields out. But I do get from Tomlin's perspective, we're not scoring points. Like, what the hell's going on? Though I don't think they would really score that many more points if Russell Wilson's in the game. It's not really, I think, look at the way he's played the last couple of years. Congrats on the engagement. My question is this. As a lifelong Browns fan, I was hopeful about our team being able to overcome the woes of Deshaun Watson. But so far, it hasn't played out. Do you think it's a bad idea for the Browns to just stick with him all year and get a higher draft pick than to change at quarterback? With Deshaun's cap situation, a rookie quarterback contract could help offset his cap space and also give us the ability to move on from this disastrous player on our team. I think the best case scenario, if you're a Browns fan right now, would just be to have Deshaun Watson play every game and lose every game and end up with a top 2 or 3 pick. and just hopefully you're able to reset the franchise. But I do believe this. Shador Sanders would refuse to play for you, given this situation. I think if Cam Ward has an, I mean, if I was representing Cam Ward, we would refuse to play for the Browns. If I was Quinn Ewers' representation, that is a hard no. So I do think this situation, the problem is it makes everything weird. It really does. It just creates chaos. And if I'm a Browns fan, I'm really, really mad at my owner. Because it's one thing, I get why the GM and the head coach were interested in Deshaun Watson. He was not coming there until Mulgeta took advantage of him and charged him $230 million. And that's why he's on the team. And he's objectively one of the worst players we've ever seen over the course early on in this season and moments last year. It's that bad. It really is. Can't throw from within the pocket. No speed to scramble. Arm looks crappy. Body language, all time awful. When you see his eyes, when they go to his face, you know, sometimes like in a movie, if you're watching like a dark movie, they're like, I looked in his eyes. He just looked dead. He was gone. You know, it's like one of those moments where it's just over. Like you just look in those eyes, it just looks dead. And if you think about it, I was thinking about this the other day. This contract obviously was a lot of money to Deshaun Watson, but he was already really rich. He was a top 15 pick, which meant he got some money, not like game changing money, but millions of dollars. And then he signed a contract extension with the Texans. I think $100+ million contract extension. So he was super rich. So it's this money obviously has added more money to his bank account, but if he wanted to eat at the nice steakhouse, if he wanted to buy 2 G-Wagons, if he wanted to buy a second home, he already had the cash to do that. I can't imagine. I don't know if there's karma for the situations with the masseuses. There can't be a worse situation to be a human being. Like if you're Deshaun Watson, like life has to suck. Everyone's looking at you weird. Everyone thinks you suck because you do. No chance your teammates really like you. Because even if I first met Deshaun as a teammate a couple years ago, it's like, nice guy. Got along with him. Even if that was my interaction, after a while, we're all human beings. So put it into normal humans. Let's just say you're working a job. You're 30 years old. You've been at the company for a little while. You're doing well. You're making 100 grand with bonuses and you hit some, make a couple sales here and there. You get up to like 150. You're financially well. You live in a place where that goes a long way. Then you got a dude who is in a more important position who makes, let's just pick for argument's sake, $5 million. You're like, listen, I met the guy who's nice, but this guy makes so much more money than me. And then after a while, you go, I think I'm more valuable than this guy. I'm not even saying you have to be a quarterback. You could be a guard. You could be a DB. You can be a tight end. You start thinking, they're paying this guy $60 million to suck this bad. And he makes like the uniform I wear look awful because of everything he created. Like after a while, you're going to start resenting it. We're all human beings. And a lot of it in the private sector comes back to cash. And we kind of compare ourselves to other people, especially those we work with. Wait, you're paying him how much? And I'm way better. I'm more valuable. And he's bad at his job and no one likes him. To me, it starts to snowball. And that's, how could you be a player on the Browns if you're just a solid player? And I'm just going to pick a number. Let's just say you make $4 million, which obviously to society is a boatload of money. You're a top 1% of 1%er. But relative to the locker room, you're not even close to the highest paid, right? They got a lot of high paid guys on that team. But the highest paid guy on that team makes the gap between you and him is really, really wide. It's like, like, oh, I'm going to be a good teammate because that's what I'm taught in football. Like, be a good guy. Don't make it about yourself. It's about we, not I. And after a while, though, you're just like, no, this ain't it. So to me, they're going to have a mutiny inside that, like, we can't keep doing this. Also, the livelihood of most of these players, not named like Myles Garrett, you're kind of always fighting for your job every single year in the NFL. There aren't scholarships don't really exist for the overwhelming majority of players. It's good ones too. The roller coaster of an NFL season is moving right along, and it promises to be a month full of tricks, treats, and of course, touchdowns. At DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is the number one place to bet touchdowns. Running it from the one or an 80-yard bomb. We don't care how they score touchdowns. We want to bet on them. DraftKings heard us and is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like a player to score a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance of their own. Bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. Fellow Cal Poly alum, go Mustangs. Question for the bag. How do you evaluate a talent like Cam Ward? I'm not a huge into college football, but I watched the Cal-Miami game and couldn't help but think that his backyard football style, as of now, might not translate. As a scout, how do you evaluate hero ball? Well, Caleb Williams was the number one hero ball maybe guy of all time. And as of last week, he's made huge strides at the best game as a pro. So when you're in the NFL, unless, it's Nick Saban or Sark or Lane Kiffin or some of these guys, the coach is kind of irrelevant. And usually you go, yeah, he's not that good. We wouldn't hire him. We got Andy Reid. We got Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan. We'll get the guy right. And that's how you kind of look at it as a scout. And you go, was he accurate? Does he have good arm strength? Do you feel comfortable with him making all the throws? How is he at the line of scrimmage? What's his control? Is he making the checks? Does he understand? Is he comfortable running your offense against zone and man, against the difference coverages? What's he like against the blitz? You start factoring all these things in. And more than likely, depending on the program, you're going to go, yeah, the coach is probably average, or decent, or maybe below. But you go, my guy's good. And if my guy's comfortable with his attributes, we can get the hero ball thing away. And obviously, it can be a detriment to Cam Ward, but it can also be a positive. Like I've said this about Anthony Richardson. I said this about Josh Allen. I said this about Trey Lance. I have no problem ever with – now, the problem with Trey Lance, he doesn't have the physical skills, not even remotely close to Anthony Richardson and Josh Allen. Like, his downfall isn't just he's not good. It's like his physical attributes are average. Obviously, Cam Ward's are not. Shedeur has some I can speak to Shedeur. I've watched him much more closely than Cam. I don't know. I'd have to look who Cam's offensive coordinator is. But for example, Shedeur, it's like, well, he's always playing hero ball. Well, yeah, his offensive coordinator is Pat Shurmur, who I wouldn't hire to be my tight end coach in the NFL, who calls 4 and 5 wide. Now, maybe Deion's making him do it, but when his offensive line can't block him, he's running for his life. Yet I watch Shedeur in big spots, pretty calm and collected, and can make big spots. Same thing with Cam, even if sometimes they're partly responsible for putting themselves there. So to me, these two quarterbacks, like Georgia's guy, Carson Beck, if you just watch him, he plays much more naturally in the construct of the offense. 3, 5-step drop, hitch, release. But I watch him, I just go, I don't think he's that good. It's like, well, he lost his tight end, he lost his wide receiver. Yeah, you can give me all the excuses you want. I'm just watching him, the eye test, and go, yeah. I'm not saying he's a scrub. I'm not saying he won't get drafted. But you couldn't pay me to draft that guy in the top 2 rounds. Where I see the other guys, yeah, they might fail. Cam and Shedeur. You never know. It's the NFL, it's the draft. We see crazy things happen all the time. But I'm taking a chance with that talent. So assuming, and from everything I've heard, Cam Ward, great guy. People love him. Been a big time leader on Miami. So to me, Cam Ward has a very, very good chance, even with the quote unquote hero ball, to be the number 1 overall pick. I mean, shit, look, Bryce Young, who's a 5'9", 178-pound guy, went number 1 overall. Kyler Murray had some hero ball to him. It's like, that's Talent is a big discrepancy if you get the right talent with the coach. Patrick Mahomes, Monday Night Football, you like a couple 360s. He's like an Allen Iverson juke move. Now it works, so it looks cool, but sometimes it doesn't. Like that's what I want. I mean, I want a little bit of a playmaker. There just aren't that many like Peyton Manning, like runs it perfectly. 1-2 out, 3-4 out. If it goes to zone, the man, we move down. It's like, yeah, that's all that stuff sounds great in theory, but like eventually, what happens when the guard gets smoked by Chris Jones? Derek Carr screwed. Well, if that's Kyler Murray, like, yeah, might be screwed. Also, the play might be alive. I'm curious to know your thoughts on Nico Iamaleava. I think I screwed that up, but the Tennessee quarterback. It is abundantly clear that Heupel and the coaching staff don't trust him at all. They run the ball on third and long with regularity and generally seem to try to keep the ball out of his hands as much as they can. He also, at least to my untrained eye, struggles with accuracy on most throws, regardless if he's in the pocket or not. I understand he's only in his sixth start, but sometimes the coaching staff and their decision making can be telling. Well, as a young player, you have to give the coaching staff a reason to trust you, right? So until you earn my trust, these offensive coaches are not going to put it on your back. So let's use examples of guys recently drafted high. CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels last year with Brian Kelly. I'm just listing Bo Nix and Michael Penix with their respected staffs. They were so good so fast. Well, obviously a couple of them different paths, but I just meant like with their offense. Bo Nix was good right away for Oregon. Michael Penix was good right away for Washington. Jaden Daniels had a year playing for Brian Kelly. Obviously, Caleb had been with Lincoln the whole time. Those guys trusted him fast, and they responded, and they made big-time plays through some touchdowns. Nico, who I kind of put all my chips on the table of, and I got to be very careful about doing this because I did the same thing with Jackson Arnold. It's one thing to do it with an NFL player. I'd have never watched these guys play besides some YouTube highlights of their high school. So who knows? And playing college quarterback, going from modern day or wherever you come from, high school in Texas, the gap is way wider than playing at Oregon or USC or Texas than going to the NFL, which is obviously a wide gap. But at least in those games, you're playing in front of 70, 80, 90,000 people against, in your biggest games, a ton of other NFL players. In high school, for the most part, you're not playing against that many Power 5 Division I players. On a given game, maybe, but the totality of your high school career, you're playing a lot of John Middlekauffs. There's nothing wrong with that. I almost said tried hard, but I wouldn't consider myself a try hard guy. Bad shape. And small. I think they had high hopes, and early on, it was like, damn. And then obviously against Oklahoma, who is excellent at defense. The Arkansas game, full disclosure, I was boozing hard, and I was at the DraftKings Sportsbook and watching a ton of games, and wasn't super locked in on that one. I think by the time we got home, we watched the end of it, and I remember he ran out of bounds to end the game. So you could argue it's not only I don't trust him with the accuracy if I'm the coaching staff, do I trust his football IQ right now? Because that's a play that just cannot happen. It's unacceptable. You can't run out of bounds. It's like guys that, do that on fourth down or don't throw it to the sticks. It's like, guys, there are certain contexts of the sport of football that it's just, if this happens, you can't catch a ball out of bounds. So if you throw the ball out of bounds, it's impossible to get caught. If it is no time left and you're scrambling around and you are down, if you go out of bounds, the game ends. And from a coaching, scouting perspective, it doesn't get any dumber than that. And you could say, hey, you got to coach these situations. You got to be put in these situations. You're a young player, a lot going on the road. Arkansas is actually sneaky, not bad. There are a lot of different variables. But eventually, like, I have to rely. One thing I think you've noticed this whole time with Andy and Mahomes is Andy was very, very confident and comfortable early on with Mahomes just as an instinctive player. Like, you know what? I trust your instincts. Doesn't mean you're not going to fail sometimes or get it wrong, but I trust your instincts. And I think the best players are all very, very instinctive players that you're not born knowing this stuff, but I definitely think it gets developed early on in your athletic career, whether it's in like pee-wee football, high school football, just playing with your friend. You just develop these instincts. Maybe even a little in college, but like for the most part, once you get to the NFL, like you got instincts or you don't. And sometimes early on in college, you can still develop them because, like you said, it's only a six start. But that is an area that must be developed as this kid's going to be a star. Because Oklahoma did the thing with Jackson Arnold. They're like, yeah, he's just not, he doesn't know. This is not going to work. And we don't have time for him just to like hopefully develop instincts on the fly. Because right now his instincts are destroying us. And when you get an instinctive player that knows what they're doing, and you could argue that Bo Nix and Michael Penix had got to develop those at Indiana and at Auburn. So by the time, and maybe that's fair. It's why actually the transfer portal has served a lot of guys well because they've got to fail and then they get to their new place and they're ready to succeed. But Tennessee at one point in time, it's like, God, is their defensive line good enough? Their offensive pieces, we know their coach is pretty good. And then this guy feels a little overwhelmed, which, like Jackson Arnold and him, you go, wow, he's 18, 19-year-old guy with like championship expectations. It's pretty difficult in the SEC where it's just insane. It's like the New York Jets level fervor. So I wouldn't write the guy off, but I think it shows how difficult this is. And I'm thinking I had a few, but I remember sitting on my couch because we had gotten back from the sports book and watching him run out of bounds. It's like, what, what was that? Why don't the Jets win on this? Hire Belichick. I think they would love to. I think Woody Johnson would hire him yesterday. He'd hire him tomorrow, and he'd hire him at the end of the season. I think there are certain things that are non-negotiables, and we all have them in life. I think the older you get, you have less and less of them. You realize as you've just experienced different things, kind of never say never. You never know how things are going to end up personally, in relationships, with business. That's why, you learn early on, you're taught this. And it really, as you age, you realize the power of it. Like, don't burn bridges, be careful, treat people well, um, personally and professionally. Belichick hates these fucking guys. And one thing, as I've gotten older, like, if you ask me, like, who do you hate? Like, honestly, I try not to hate anybody unless you wronged my family, my dog, or my future wife, or my unborn children. Like, I don't have the energy to hate you. If you screwed me financially and the number was big enough, that could go there. I have been screwed financially before, uh, but looking back, the number didn't derail my life. Matt originally, I don't care, but it could get to a point where obviously the hate would come out and I would hate you forever, probably. But it would take a lot. And I'd say most people I associate with would fall somewhat under that umbrella. Like it takes a lot. Belichick is not one of those humans. And however that situation played out when he quit on them with Parcells and got traded to the obviously they played each other for however 2.5 decades. I just can't see him doing it. Now, listen, we all have a product of what's going on. Well, what if he has no other job offers? What if the Jets are his only job offer? Then I think we would learn. Does he want to break this record? Does he want to still coach? Or does he kind of indifferent? I saw a picture going viral of him with his new girlfriend. He wearing the Taylor Swift sweatshirt. Maybe he doesn't care because it's not out of the realm of possibility. That's his only offer. I would imagine he has more, but who knows? 72, 73 years old. I think Jets would hire him in a heartbeat. Definitely at the end of the season, if he'd be willing to do it, because that would be a huge win for Woody Johnson. He'd get a ton of credit, get to play the Patriots, get Bill Belichick to break that record as a New York Jet, in theory. But I don't think it's going to happen. And I think it's because of Bill. If Bill has options, 100% would not take it. If Bill didn't have options, I still think he would think long and hard about, like, yeah, maybe my career's just over. And I'll just do this YouTube and McAfee and Peyton Manning shit for the next 4 or 5 years and just kind of kick it and just enjoy life. I got 6 rings as a head coach, 2 more as an assistant. Like, what else can I accomplish? You break the record, but do I want to break the record and one day when I'm dead have the picture of me in a Jets hoodie? I don't think he would. I don't. I mean, this is a Northeast. There's a guy that holds grudges. There's a guy that holds grudges. So I would. I don't know. We've never really got to the bottom. I've never read a great explanation. Obviously, there are a lot of variables here, but like a specific instance, pretty sure Woody Johnson didn't even own the team at the time. But I would bet against Bill Belichick ever being the New York Jets head coach.